Hello. So remember, I don't know how many videos ago, but I told you that I have a bunch of fiber that I was about to start processing, and that I had a location I was going to convert into a fiber studio and get going on it. I have an update about that. Let me show you. A couple days ago, it burnt up. So this house belongs to my parents, and they were renovating this one and that one over there. They're actually planning on living in that one. And then my brother at some point was going to live in this one. But until that time, I was going to convert most of it anyway to a fiber studio. Thankfully, I had not even started that yet. All of my fiber is still over there, safe and sound. But I actually was not that far away from making the transformation. Yeah, so this happened just a couple days ago. And let me give you a glimpse inside. This front porch area has all the stuff left over from when I had the Alma store, my alpaca store in Alma. Most of that stuff is now sitting at our mobile store on the ranch, but I still have some display items in here that I had and I mean like hooks and stuff for displaying product. So actually this front porch, even though it did totally burn, definitely burnt, I don't think I have lost much up in here. Very little, in fact. But this room right here is the living room, dining room area, and that's where I was going to put the primary fiber studio. Just beyond it is the kitchen. And of course, that would be where I would be washing stuff and dyeing stuff. And then beyond that is the laundry room. So I've been washing fiber in there and drying fiber in there as well. So those were the areas of the house that I was going to use. And now I got to come up with something else. But see, this was plan A. My plan B was to, let me tell you. My plan B was to use my garage. Now, I didn't want that to be my plan A because of weather and wind and stuff. I thought the house would be more comfortable. Just kind of easier to work with overall. But what is salvageable in this house now needs to go in that garage. So I'm having to come up with a whole new plan, and I'm really not quite sure what. So be on the lookout for that. In case you're wondering, the working theory is that within this tree here is an electric pole. And the day that this happened, it was incredibly windy. In fact, I mentioned in a previous video, the one where I said, hello, it's April, welcome to April, that for the week prior to that, which would have been last week, incredibly high winds. I mean 40, 50 mile per hour winds all day for days at a time. The day that this burnt, there was again 40 mile per hour winds. So the theory is that these wires were moving about. You can see the tree growing right around those lines. And so somehow a spark got started, fell to the base of that tree, started burning it up. Right here there was a tree line. You can kind of see some trunks left. It was full of lilac bushes and trees, and when it was all leafed out, you could not see this house from the road. But look at that. You can see the neighbor just so clear. And actually that neighbor got a little bit of it too. So it got this, the yard, his house, and then the yard next to his. It was very fast. It's been very dry. And it was very windy. So it moved very, very fast. In fact, it got just 30 feet from my house where I was sitting in my office. We got that out as well as the fire out for the garage of this house before the fire department even arrived. And then I live in this little town. I mean, like 100 people little town. And so we do have a fire department, and the small towns around us all have fire departments too. There were 8 agencies that showed up to put this fire out. And it took them 3 hours. Finally, my fire department stayed till the end. The other ones came, helped, and left. Actually, they had to go to another fire. But yeah, it took them 3 hours until they were satisfied that this was fully out. And the reason it was so important that all of them came is that if this tree line had continued to go, in fact, it had gone across the driveway here to that corner, that was on fire. You could probably tell it's a little dark there. And so it was moving its way up. That house over there, the neighbor of this guy, I told you that yard got burnt up. If this line of trees had caught fire with the wind that was blowing that day, the embers would have carried to other parts of the town, and it's very possible most of this town would have been on fire. So it was important that all those people were here to put the fire out. Anyway, I know, big saga. But you know what? It's not all bad. Today I'm doing something very fun. Well, no, I'm getting ready to do something very fun. Well, let me show you. I get to work on my RV. Next weekend, I go to the Mid-Plains Fiber Fair. I'm taking 2 classes, one on Saturday and one on Sunday. So I have to stay the night, and it's the perfect opportunity to take my RV out for the very first time. I have not taken it out. And some time ago, I don't know, at least a year ago, probably more, maybe a year and a half ago, I told you that I had got this. And I had all these plans for it. Now I think that was in the year of COVID, so of course things got kind of screwed up. But I also had family come and stay with me last year, and they actually used this for 9 months. So was not really available to me. And in fact, it hasn't really been cleaned since they left. So that is my task for today. Now this RV did get saved from the fire because it was parked behind the house. And before the fire department came, and I was running around checking everything, I had seen that the corner of the house just behind the RV was on fire. So I went and checked that. There was actually fire right in front of it as well. Sorry, I got a phone call. Neither fires were super close, but it was just a matter of time. So I ran and got the keys, and I drove the RV through the driveway that you saw where the fire was going on both sides of the driveway there along the tree line. I actually drove through a wall of smoke to get it out. I wasn't driving it through any flames. I knew that. And I knew where the road was. But all I could do was pull out onto the road and drive where I knew it was because I actually couldn't see it. So drove around the corner to where I could see and pulled it here and has sat here for a few days ever since. So now I'm going to position it in front of the house where I can actually clean it really well. Oh, I'm going to go as far as I can. All right. She's in place. And here she is. I've already taken a few things out already. Let me give you a quick tour. So we enter the door, we have a lounge space that does turn into a bed. There's a closet here. There's storage across there. And the kitchen, which storage underneath. You see a sink and stove, propane stove, overhead light. Next to that is the fridge. Underneath that, there's a little bit of storage in front, and behind it is the hot water tank. Below that is the freshwater tank that you can see from inside this area here. Here's a switch for the water pump. Behind that door is the bathroom. We have an over the cab sleeping area, and then the dinette, which turns into a bed as well. Oh, and then right here is the heater and a little more storage. So my next task is to take out everything that can be washed, like laundered. The curtains, I don't know the last time they've been washed. There's some sheets left in here, things like that. And then do really good vacuuming and then really good wipe down. I don't know if I'm going to get to the wipe down today. That might be tomorrow. And then the windshield is super, super dirty because it's just been sitting out for so long. So I'll have to clean that up really well before I try and drive it somewhere. So that is on my agenda for today and tomorrow. I do have plans to do some updates in here, some painting and modifications and all kinds of plans. So in future videos, you'll be hearing more about it.
Your nose, right? You trust that your nose knows what a tannin smells like.
Oh, that's so pretty. It's minus all the vegetable matter on it. I mean, just the colors, gorgeous.
I know. It'll shake out, I promise. Oh my gosh. Does anybody have like a gallon jug in their car? Does anybody want to take some of this dye home? I made it.
Hey everyone! So I have been here for, how long have I been here? Probably about a day, probably about 24 hours. And this has been my first trip in my RV. I spent nearly a week cleaning and getting it ready. And I had a decision to make because the day I was supposed to travel, high winds were predicted. And all throughout the time here. As you could hear and probably tell by the shaking of the camera, there's still high winds. And actually right now is some of the strongest winds of the entire time. So, I mean, we're talking 20 to 30 mile per hour winds. 24 hours. So my whole trip here, which without any delays or driving slower than usual, would take about 2 hours. It did take longer. I'm actually not sure exactly how much longer. I did stop about halfway through, took a lunch break, rested my arms, but it was an adventure to get here. And then sleeping last night, I woke up a lot because of the gusts of wind. I did sleep though, I did. Before I tell you that, I woke up this morning and I did take a class. So I learned about some traditional historic dyes. And the reason I wanted to take that class was because since I have alpacas, which are very eco-friendly, very green animals, I wanted to learn a more natural way to dye the fiber for those who are interested in products like that, and to kind of maintain the green eco-friendliness of the fiber itself. So that's why I took that class. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to be taking a spinning class on long draw spinning, which I've never done. I do short drafting. I pretty much have like one way that I spin and that's it. And so I'm interested in kind of expanding how I spin, styles I spin, spinning faster, which is what long draw is used for, spinning faster. One of the things it's used for. But that's what makes it appealing to me, and how that will work with alpaca. So what I'm doing now is the first time I'm ever using a niddy noddy. I have a bobbin here that I had finished spinning onto the last time I had my wheel out, and I need to clear my bobbins for my class tomorrow. So I snapped this out of my store. I do have one of these left. This is a niddy noddy from Shacked. I believe it's Shacked. But it's the kind that is adjustable. It can be 1.5 or 2 yards. This also means that when I'm done, I just release it and it easily comes out, rather than like having a difficult time getting it off of one of the ends. And it also means that this end will rotate, so it travels easier flat than if it were to stay this shape. So yes, I have one of these left in my store. If it's not listed, I believe it's listed there. If it's not, let me know. This is a birch wood. I think the one that I have in the store left is a cherry stain. Very beautiful, but this matched my wheel. So yeah, I had to look up a YouTube video about how to use this, and thank you to Chem Knits. What's her name on Chem Knits? Oh my goodness, I forgot. I watched a number of videos before they actually showed it in a way that made sense. At first I started watching videos from a very reputable fiber arts dealer that sells just about anything fiber arts that you could think of. I watched 2 of their videos, and neither of them made it clear how I was to do it. So Rebecca from Chem Knits. Yes, thank you, Rebecca from Chem Knits, because you actually explained it in a way that I could do it, rather than going over the left side, under the right side, blah, 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 showing me from a perspective that I didn't understand. So here I am, working on my nitty noddy. And I think I got it. Thanks, Rebecca. Now it makes sense. So my plan is to get all of my bobbins cleared. I don't know what you're hearing. You're probably seeing everything shaking right now. This is crazy. This is crazy. Anyway, I'm gonna clear my bobbins, and then I did bring some roving to start practicing on. I have not spun in a few months. I forget the last time. And I might be a bit rusty. I don't want to go in the class tomorrow rusty, so I'm gonna practice today, kind of get the feel for it again. But that should leave 2 bobbins open for tomorrow, and I should be good with that. So look at this. Look at this beautiful yarn. The twist is very loose. but it's beautiful. I think once this is washed, it's gonna fluff up so nicely, so nicely. I don't know, can you see that very well? Probably not. It's focused on me and not the yarn. All right, so I'll see you in a bit. I just took it off. Look at this, a nice pretty hank, and here's the yarn. See that well? I think you can see that well. Okay. Yes. So now we're gonna twist. Oh, can you really see what I'm doing? Can you hear that wind? Oh, you know what? Life is an adventure. Now this is wool, it's not alpaca. These are pretty. So prior to using a nitty knotty, I was just taking it off with my ball winder, which was not always the best. That's not a great way to store your yarn. The other way I was doing it, maybe I was doing it onto the ball winder, and then I had the Swift. So I was pretty much doing the opposite, or I was going directly from the wheel to the Swift. But the Swift is not consistent in the diameter, at least not the way that I was doing it. And so the hanks would come out really wonky looking. So all the hanks that I have at home of my hand spun are all kind of that wonkiness, but I wanted consistency and something that looked nicer. So I'm looking forward to actually washing this when I get home, seeing how the loft of it, how it poofs, and not poof is not the right word. What's the right word? You know what I'm talking about, when I wash it and then, you know, it kind of fluffs. What's that called? I don't know. I'll find out later.
Doing it from that big old thing, because I can't even see the thread. I'm going for another month, and then you have to move different places because there's a couple of them over. That's what the one gal had said, that that's why I'm not listening.
Yeah. I get there, I've been working so many Saturdays at different jobs, and then I was gonna come like after the last one, but the last one I was on a rabbit show. The one before that I was so sick. Yeah, I wanted to go so bad, but I felt awful. No, the Fremont.
So do you take your wheel and spin during the thing? Depends on what your program is. Okay, we were doing a knitting thing last time. We might do a knitting thing next time if we talk from down to do it probably ASAP. You're gonna have to kick us out, aren't you?
What time is it now?
It's about 3.
Okay.
It's like 2 minutes to 3, so I'll just.
Dinner's over.
My husband just texted
Till there's
me,
no more
so
fiber.
wisdom, yeah.
We,
I'll start gathering stuff together, but you guys can.
I'll take the stuff out of my wagon. You're sure welcome to use it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll start.
Actually have that much in it for a while.
Hey, I hope the sound is okay. The wind is really blowing and you can probably hear it, but the wind's been blowing for weeks, which is why I haven't been filming much. And I mean high winds, 20 to 40 mile per hour winds, day after day after day. And I don't know if you've seen in the news that we've been having wildfire issues here in Nebraska. And I'm actually standing behind a field that just burned yesterday. This is 2.5 miles from my house. I actually got the call, be prepared to evacuate, because the wind, just like now, was blowing towards my house. And the wind was stronger yesterday. And in fact, I'm on the south end of this pasture that burnt, and it goes a mile that way. So it got very close to my house. Now I was looking from a high hill. I was watching, the fire trucks come and go. This is out in the hills. The ranch sits a mile north of a lake, the Harlan County Reservoir, which is an amazing lake, a beautiful lake. It's the second largest lake in the state, but it was formed by a dam that was built by the Army Corps of Engineers because there were flooding issues in this area at one time. So there's a river that runs through this valley, and it created all the hills. Here, let me show you this way. All the hills. They're beautiful hills. And actually, when my family first settled in this area, that they settled out in these hills. I live in town now, but as most people do, very few people live out in the hills anymore. That was before the Dust Bowl years and before the Great Depression. Those two events, a lot of people left. And what you find out here now is mostly cattle grazing. I don't know if there was any cattle in this pasture that burnt yesterday. I didn't hear about any animals, so possibly not, or they just weren't here at the time, or they moved them on. When they had the chance, they moved them on to another pasture, herded them somewhere else. But this is what's going on. All right, back in the truck. So some of the wildfires you may have seen on the news. There have been 2 large ones in my part of the state that they are 2 and 3 counties west or northwest of the ranch. So not far from me at all, and I mean thousands of acres burned. There is still one burning now. It's near Cambridge, Nebraska. And I checked this morning, they have it 74% contained, but it has been going for at least a week. I forget when it started, at least a week. But the issue is that this area is so dry. I mean, we had hardly any snow all winter, and we've gotten very little rain this spring. So dry. And 2 weeks ago is when the house next to me burnt. I don't know if I shown that in this video or in the previous one. So this is a serious issue. And what's good is we're supposed to get rain in, I think, the day after tomorrow. There right now is 70% chance of rain. So we'll see what happens. And I hope we get it. I hope the Cambridge area gets it so those firefighters get some relief. They've been working so hard. We actually have the Nebraska National Guard here with helicopters helping to put that fire out. And what's interesting, I've spoken before that I grew up in the city. And so fighting fires and fire departments operate very differently than here, which here it's all volunteer. It is all volunteer. And so there's fire departments from these little towns, and they have the equipment, they have the trucks, the gear, the training, but it's all volunteer people, and they wear these beepers that tell them when there's a fire. And they have what they call mutual agreements for mutual aid. So like this was just outside of my town. So of course my town fire department was out here, but they called in help from surrounding area fire departments as well. And 2 weeks ago when the house next to me burnt, there was 8 agencies there. I don't know how many came out to this one, probably at least that many. And there was one additional that showed up here that was not at my house or the house next to me. So, I mean, you get as many people as possible, as many agencies as possible with big tanker trucks holding water, because that's how, like, you got to carry the water out here when you're working on that stuff. And it's just a whole different world, a whole different approach to fighting fires than what I knew about in the city. You know, there's not fire hydrants here on every corner, you know, and reinforcements, you know, they could take a while. There's agencies like 40 minutes away from here that, you know, they had to take the time to gear up and travel here and then take part. I think they worked on this for about 3 hours, I want to say. But this is the kind of situation that can turn very, very bad. I mean, you can see the pasture. It's hardly green out there. It's hardly, like, I'm looking at it, I can hardly see any green, you know, and it's because we have not had rain. We are the end of April, and our trees, there's so many trees without leaves still because there's not moisture. And the leaves we do see, they're just very small. It's just, everything is so delayed. It's so delayed. It's so sad. So if you are someone who prays, please pray for our area. This is pretty serious.